Welcome to The Problem Was Me. I'm your host, Tom Gagliano. I'm a best-selling author, family dynamics expert, and social worker. And we'll be discussing childhood messages and their impact on addiction, the intimacy we have or don't have, our parenting skills, the careers we choose, even the roles we're set up to play in life. Do you put other people's needs ahead of your own? Do you have a hard time sharing your feelings? Do you feel invisible? Do you have a hard time saying no to others? Do you have an inner voice screaming for help, but yet you're so afraid of allowing others to hear this voice? Well, you've come to the right show. I'll be touching upon these issues and much more from my personal and professional experiences to help you end the negative self-talk and take your life to a new level. The Problem Was Me starts now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Problem Was Me with your host, me, Tom Gagliano. So in this podcast, we're going to talk about three subjects. One is how to get through a tough breakup. Two is, what do you do if there's kids involved? How do you handle your children? How do you help your children get through that breakup? And the third piece is why it's important to get counseling, marriage counseling, or professional help before there's a problem, even in the beginning of a relationship. So let's start with the first piece, how to get through a tough breakup. You know, for some of us, a breakup could be one of the most painful, hurting feelings that we go through in life. It could really bring us down. We go through this process of just denial, where we can't believe it happened. You know, the grieving process. We go through anger, where we are so mad at our partner for the things they did to us. We go through sadness, where we say, oh, why did I waste this time, this energy with this person? And finally, we go through acceptance, where we are ready to move on. I want to encourage everybody, don't jump into another relationship. Stop and pause. Think about what you could learn from that relationship that can make the next relationship more endearing, healthier, and better. It's important to stop and learn more about yourself. As I say in all my podcasts, the most important relationship you have is the one you have with yourself. You're the key ingredient in all your relationships, and you are the key ingredient to a happy life, the common denominator in all your relationships. So stop and pause, do a little self-inventory, and look at your last relationship. Use it as an opportunity to go into a healthier relationship the next time. Because if you don't, there's a shot you'll go in this with the same personality again. The same thing will happen, and you'll say, how did this happen again? That definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So I want you to stop and pause. Think about it. Was your partner bringing out the best in you? Were you bringing out the best in them? Did they help you attain your goals? Did you help them attain your goals? It's important to look at that piece. If we're in a relationship, I would assume a lot of times we want that to be a lasting relationship. So that means it's going to be around a long time. Build on it. Build on it. What'd you like about your relationship? What didn't you like about your relationship? Ask yourself those questions. Ask yourself, how did you show up? Were you too controlling, codependent, too needy? Did you always have to be right in every conversation? How did they show up? Did they always have to be right, that your feelings never mattered? Were they too codependent? Were they too controlling? Were they too needy? Take the time to reflect back on your last relationship. Write it down on a piece of paper. Not just here, write it in a piece of paper. What you liked, what you didn't like. It's very important to do these things so we're better equipped to find a healthier relationship the next time. When you shared your feelings, did you feel validated? Were you ashamed? Were you afraid to share your feelings because you'd be put down? Were you able to validate your partner's feelings, make them feel like their feelings matter? If our feelings don't matter, we feel like we don't matter. Very important. Think about that. Were you afraid to share your feelings? Did you shut down, run away, get angry? And what about them? What did they do? Did you feel like a priority in your relationship? Now, that doesn't mean every time you always have to feel like priority, but did you feel important? Did you make them feel important? Now, you could solicit help from others to help you with this, people you trust, people, not negative people that are always going to tell you what you did wrong, never telling you what you did right, or people that didn't like them for some reason. Healthy people that really want to help you. Say, hey, I need your help. Need a little feedback. What'd you think of my last relationship? What do you think I need to work on? What do you think I accepted? Boundaries. When I said no, did they accept no? Very important. Boundaries have to be short, specific, and fair. Now, if you're always explaining your boundary to that person, that's not healthy. I don't have to always explain to you why I want or need what I want. Did you allow them? Did you cross boundaries with them as well? This is all important. So take the time, pause, take a breather, and write down some of the things you've heard in this podcast so far. Write it on paper. Find out what you like, what you don't like. Find out what you did that you could have made it a better relationship. Find out what they did that hurt you. How'd you get through your struggles? Did you feel better when you spoke to your partner or worse? These are such key questions you should be asking yourself before you jump into the next relationship. So now let's go on to children. You know, that's always my passion. I came from parents, get this, that were divorced from each other 3 times. I don't know if that's a record or not. I got to go look at the Guinness Book of World Record, but from each other. They didn't know half the time if they were married or not. When my father, unfortunately, was dying in the hospital, they had to go find out if they were married or not. Now, I'm not saying anybody came from that kind of childhood, but that's the childhood I came from. Why am I saying this? Because when they broke up, it was like a grenade in my life. I was a young kid. I was 8, 9 years old. My world exploded. Don't underestimate how powerful that is to children if they're involved too. So let's talk about some of the key things that you can do to help your child when there's a breakup. Okay, one is make sure you keep telling them it's not their fault. Kids are egocentric. They always think everything's about them. Emphasize that it's not your fault. Number 2, don't manipulate your children and always say, what is your partner doing? Who are they dating? How are they acting? What's it like? If you do that, you're giving your children the message that they don't matter, that they're just spies for you to find out information. And they'll grow up manipulating those around them in their adult relationship because kids are little sponges. They're market researchers. They do what they're taught to do, version of intimacy early on. So don't try to solicit information from them. Also, if you do move on, if you do have a good relationship with those children, if they're your children or they're not, but you have a good relationship with those children and you move on to another relationship, remember to keep in touch with them and make them feel like they're a priority to you, that you didn't just abandon them and throw them to the side. It's very important. Another thing that's important is don't try to tell your partner how to parent your children. Do the best parenting you can do. When you start to put negative feelings into your children all the time, what's going to happen? Remember, they don't see that person the way you do most of the time. Maybe sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. Many times they love that person, even though you may have fallen out of love for that person. Respect that. So don't put that parent down. Don't say, is he doing this or she doing this, or they shouldn't do this or they should do this. Don't parent for them. Parent for you. Remember, their relationship with them will be very, very different from the relationship you have with your children as well. And don't get angry when your children, if they want to spend more time. This isn't a competitive race. Put your children first. I want to tell you something. In my experience with my parents, the parent that put me first is the parent I grew the closest to when I got older, because I knew they cared about me first, not their agenda first. And ironically, that parent that put me first, he was the addict. He was the one that really screwed things up, but he always said to me, he never put the other person down, never. In fact, he always respected my mother, and said, listen, that's your mom. She'll always be there for you. That was important to me, to know that I came first, not their anger for the other parent. So just try and remember that. So don't interfere with the other person's communication either. Don't tell the other person they should have said this, they shouldn't have said this, they should have did this, they should have did that. Again, do the best you can. That child may not look at that parent the way you think they look at that parent or that caregiver or whoever it is. Keep all of this in mind, because you want to create a safe environment for your child when they go through this. Because I'm telling you, it's like a grenade going off in their house, in their world. It's very, very important. So I want to talk a little bit about, again, why it's important to get help before there's a problem. I have clients that have come to me that have been through a divorce, and they're starting a new relationship, and they're continuing with the therapeutical process with me. And in time, I suggest that they come in with, when it gets serious, not right away, but if they see that it's getting serious, I suggest that they come in to almost have a session, a couple session, even if they're not married. But if they're thinking of getting serious, to have that couple session. Let's build foundation, rules of engagement. Let's learn how to communicate. Many people don't know how to communicate. They want to, but they don't know how. It's not always easy unless you're given a guideline on how to do that, on how to communicate, how to be empathetic, how to share feelings, how to validate. Many of us, most of us don't know how to do that. So we want to start a relationship off on the right foot. Start it right. So we don't do that destructive dance that we get ingrained to do. And then we wonder what happened again. Things were great. We were in a honeymoon stage. Everything was wonderful. How did it get here? So it's important to understand how to build that foundation of healthy communication, of all the things that we're going to talk about right after this break. So again, I hope you come back and join me, and let's talk about why it's so important to have counseling, marriage sessions before there's a problem, not when there's a problem and there's a fire in the house. And all of a sudden, Tom, put out the fire. Some clients come to me with that. I suggest let's have a session before there's a fire in the house. So we're going to take a little break here. Please come back and join me. Thank you. We're back. Tom Gagliano here with the podcast, The Problem Was Me. So we spoke earlier about how to get through a breakup, opportunity to learn instead of jumping right into the next relationship, what I like, didn't like, what I want to see, not see in my next relationship, what I have to do, what I need from them, boundaries. And that was the first podcast. We spoke about what we need to give our children, because in a breakup, if the children are close to both caregivers, it's like a grenade going off in their life. And we don't realize the impact of that. Now I want to talk about why it's essential, in my opinion, to get counseling or marriage sessions when you start a relationship. Look, no relationship's perfect. We're always going to have our ups and downs. That's the way it is. But the barometer of a good relationship, at least for me, with my clients, is how you get out of the struggles. It's easy to get along when everything's hunky-dory. How do you get out of struggles? Do you walk away from a struggle feeling empowered with your partner, better, validated? Do you feel judged, put down? All of this stuff stems from healthy communications, healthy boundaries, and that's what we're going to talk about here. Because we want to enter into a relationship where we start out right. We're going to build the house, right? You want the foundation to be healthy, to be good, sturdy. You build a 10,000-foot house on bad foundation, you're going to be in trouble. Same thing with a relationship. Because pressures come in after a while, right? Children, finances, jobs, whatever. And how do you cope and get through that instead of detach and do what I call a destructive dance? So let's talk about that a little bit. So we have to first create rules of engagement. We've got to talk to each other. What do I do with my client? What are you afraid of saying to your partner? Well, you better say it now. Because if you don't, you're going to drink it down, and believe me, it's going to come out sideways with anger. Then they're going to say, what the heck's the matter? What we don't want to become is victims to each other when we feel like our concerns don't matter, because we're not going to hear their concerns. There's the destructive dance for you. Learning how to communicate. So first, when we do communicate, some rules. We can't shut down, we can't run away, and we can't get angry. We got to stay in that conversation. And if things upset you, learn how to say it. Look, we're having this conversation because we really do love each other. Start the conversation right. We do love each other and we want to build our relationship. And then say how you feel. You know, when you said that, I felt blank. When you did that, I felt blank. But also make sure you're not making it sound like they're the culprit. Say, hey, I'm not saying you meant to hurt me. This is a story I made up. Maybe I'm wrong, but I got to bring you my story because I don't want it to sit between us and you hear and validate their story. I know this sounds crazy and foreign and hard to do. It's like everything else. You got to practice it. But if you don't have the rules of engagement to practice, you don't know how to practice it. So start the conversations in a healthy way. Don't weaponize every conversation. If you're going into, well, you always did this and you always did that, and you always did this. If you're going to weaponize the conversation, the other person's going to just defend themselves. And then it becomes a right conversation, right and wrong. The two parties just want to be right, not listening to each other. So it's important not to weaponize the conversation. When you have conversations, talk about one specific thing. Don't bring up 10 things. It's hard to have a conversation if you're bringing up 5 things and I'm bringing up 5 things. Talk about one thing. Stick to that. I want to talk to you about this. I'm not trying to blame you. I'm not trying to blame me. I just want to help us communicate. You see the difference when the other person doesn't feel like you're telling them they're doing something wrong? It's important. Understand the version of intimacy they grew up with. Because I want to tell you, if you listen to all my podcasts before this, we're all in a relationship with our partner's childhood messages and their relationship with ours. What we saw our parents do, shutting down, running away, get angry, that's the only version we know. And that's going to show up and get reenacted in our adult life. So be aware of each other's childhood messages. Because I want to tell you something that I told my clients. What someone says is not what someone hears. The filters are not like that. Don't work like that. I could say something to my wife and she could hear something totally different. She could tell me, you know, you forgot to do blank, blank, blank. And I hear she just told me I'm a horrible husband or father. Not what she said, what I hear. So we got to be on the same tune with that. That's why when I do have couples, we talk about those childhood messages. How is it impacting? When do you time travel back to hearing what your caregivers told you, maybe not what your spouse told you? So we got to be aware of the time traveling process, and we got to be aware how it impacts our life. Another thing that's important in a relationship, keep being curious with your partner. You know, we get caught up in the world with work, children, all the other stuff, and it's easy to just drift apart and not check in with each other. I always tell couples that I want them to have a date night. I want them to have a night where they're just alone, they're just having a nice dinner, a glass of wine, just getting back to that easygoing feeling that they might have had, hopefully, at one time in their life. So date night is important. And being curious. What happened today? What happened? How you doing with your work? blah, 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 blah. Even with children, I say the same thing. Going to your kids and saying, hey, what happened today? What was the best part of your day? Worst part of your day? What's going on? That gives the person the message that they're important, that they matter. And I want to tell you, with all my clients, individual, group, whatever, the most important message we give those we love is the message that they matter to us. There's nothing more important than that. It's a message of love. So be curious with your partner. Also learning boundaries. We have to respect each other's boundaries. Now, boundaries have to be short. We don't want to elaborate, specific, get to the point, say what you want, and fair. I can't have boundaries that aren't fair. But we have to respect each other's boundaries. So when we say no, it's not always negotiable. Like, do I have to explain why I said no? No. Respect each other's boundaries as long as they're fair. Now, if the boundaries aren't fair, that's different. See, these are the reasons you need to talk to a third party. Because sometimes we don't know what fair is. We don't know what the right thing or wrong thing to do is. It's not that we don't want to. There's times we just don't know. So it's important. And that's why this part of the podcast is important, to get help with these things before a problem occurs. Now, in all relationships, you should be a priority to your partner. But as I said earlier, before we went to the break, that can't always be. Sometimes there's other things that have to come first. That's okay. But remember, we want to keep making our partner their priority. My question, how do you do that? Maybe we got to find out. Again, the reason for somebody else to maybe figure it out for us, because it's not that we don't want to. Maybe we can't figure it out. Listen, those that don't want to make their relationship better shouldn't be listening to this podcast. If you don't want to, it ain't going to work. It only works if you want to work it. Those that want to make it better, tune in, and I'll show you how, as long as you take direction. So it's really important to take steps that maybe sometimes you don't feel like doing, taking steps you don't want to do. But if those steps make the relationship better, that's the message that I care about you. It's a selfless message. So I hope this podcast helped you. Please go back, write down something. I tell all my clients, would you please write things down? Write things that you could take out that can help you. Write things that you're confused about. Email me. Write things that you want to learn more about. That's what I tell my clients. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to do a podcast on, guess what? Holiday pressures. Holidays are great. They're wonderful. We're with family, we're friends, but there's pressures too. We go back to that family of origin, and I'll get into that in the next podcast. We'll go back to those roles we were set up to play in our childhood. The people pleaser role, the caretaking role, the defiant role, don't tell me what to do, the victim role, what do I got to do on and on and on. So we're going to talk about who you want to throw that turkey leg at during Halloween. So please join me in a couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about holiday stress. We're all going to have it, even though it's beautiful. Some have more stress than others. Please join me. Maybe I could give you some tips on how to make this holiday the best ever. Thank you for joining me. Be well. You've been listening to The Problem Was Me with me, the host, Tom Gagliano. Tune in every first and third Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on the Transformation Talk Radio as I help you break the cycle of negative and addictive thinking affecting the emotional intimacy you have, your parenting skills, the careers you choose, even the roles you were set up to play. As a high-profile leader in addiction and self-help, I've helped develop unique methods and procedures which have helped numerous institutions and individuals. For more information on how I can assist you creating a healthier life, visit theproblemwasme.com.